Hello and welcome to GuyLogicGaming. My name is Temco and this is Subnautica Below Zero, the new expandalone in early access for Subnautica. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Subnautica, it is a underwater survival game where you build habitats, explore the underground oceans of a foreign planet, and then eventually escape from it. Well, this expandalone finds you not on a tropical island on a planet with a disease. This one finds you on a frozen hellhole of an island, landmass, planet. And you're not alone? Exactly, because there's a space station in space providing you tips and tricks on what you can and can't do. In most parts, Subnautica Below Zero is still very early in its release, very early in development, and there are bugs and glitches everywhere. There is placeholder content, there's placeholder models in the game world that don't do anything, and if you look a little bit further in the distance, even the far end rendering of things in the horizon is really still not quite there. Now, that means this is not a review, this is not a deep dive, this is me mostly gushing about how much I still love Subnautica and why you should keep an eye on Subnautica Below Zero, even if you don't want to play the game right now. And if you don't want to play the game right now, you are quite right in that assessment, because right now it is still a buggy mess. And that is touching it favorably. One of the first issues I encountered was not being able to use doors on the building I was trying to get in and out of, having to reload after every time I used the door because it would just give me an invisible wall. Another issue I noticed was that I just fell through the world repeatedly. A third issue I noticed was when I got out of the water, it pretended I was always out of the water instead of underwater. So that was another bug, and these are everywhere. Now, there's also some really good things because the new world is phenomenal. New critters under the ocean, though obviously not a lot of them yet. Old critters reused, such as bladderfish and the like. And you now have penguins. The biggest change though is definitely the world and the story and the way it evolves. Now, in a previous Subnautica title, you were mostly just you. You had a little bit of interaction through some voice changes and some speech things that were mostly one directional. There was no interaction between characters. There was no active messaging being shared. There was no up-to-date information. It was either a historical log or somebody speaking at you and no verbal back and forth. This time though, they have definitely improved on that aspect immensely. The voice acting alone, even though that is work in progress, is much better, much more natural, and from there, they've also improved the interaction between characters that are available. Now, you're still on your own. There is no multiplayer or settlement or anything of the like, but there is a space station in orbit that's feeding you both information and helpful tools and supplies and rations while you are stranded down below, or at least they say you're stranded because they have no idea what the hell is going on. You also quite quickly get rolled into the story instead of this piecemeal sort of thing in the previous game. Previously, you had to stumble on certain things before the story progressed. In this case, the initial start, at least of the first part of the story that's currently available in early access, is much more guided. You can still do it at your own pace and you're still not forced to do it at any rapid progression. If you don't want to, you can explore, you can build habitats, and you can work on that. But you are sort of more guided into what is expected of you in the first few hours before you get into the mid-game that, according to developers, will be much more like the game where you build and explore and incrementally go deeper and further and more interesting scenes and locales. So far though, it is very similar to the original Subnautica. In fact, you could say the only difference is the game world. And even there's a lot of similarities, especially in creatures used and biomes used and materials used. I haven't found any new materials or anything unique so far, but I'm sure the developers are going to add in at least some new areas and some new things to explore. That said, the world is completely different. And I've seen a couple of critters I had not encountered in the old game that are new. But most importantly, it is about the world. And that is really damn interesting. Now, the switch from a tropical, barren landscape with lots of sand and lots of craters and the like into this new world where it's ice and dark and thunderstorms rolling across the clouds, making even noon seem very dark underwater, does create a different sort of interaction between you and the game world. One of the first things I built here is a flashlight, whereas in the previous game, I really didn't care about that for the first few hours because the biome you found yourself in was lighted enough. Here though, it definitely isn't. The same applies for the way you do resource gathering. That's unchanged. You still have those nodes you pick at with your hand until you get titanium or copper, and then you use that to build a habitat, and you use that habitat to go a little bit further, and you build a couple extra bases, and then you have your Seamoth and all that stuff that allows you to go to the world, and then you build a knife, and a habitat builder gets dropped on you, and all of these things sort of progress as they did in the previous title. Nothing really different here. What is slightly different is the way you get drops and rations. It's no longer, oh, this ancient civilization was here, or some people were here 300 years ago, and now you find the wreckage of their homes somehow compatible with your technology for some contrived reason. It is your helpers in space throwing down a habitat builder or throwing down new resources or schematics, just giving you access to tools and methodologies you didn't have access before because of security or clearance or some other contrived bullshit reason. Nonetheless, the changes there are very interesting because you are less surviving in an unknown remote area without anyone to help you, and you're more sort of holding out and figuring out what is going on while having that sort of backdrop of support that you know will always come to the rescue, at least in the shallows and safe areas. If you find yourself lost in a cave, that is your choice. So I've also changed the way you deal with the risk-reward scenario. And that is, I think, a very interesting proposition to look at when you go further into the game. Looking at all of this, you could say I'm very positive about Subnautica Below Zero, and I definitely am. It looks to be shaping up to be a very interesting sort of sideways successor, sort of expandalone on Subnautica. But the current state of the game is not acceptable as a commercially available product. It is for sale, but that is the best you could call it. It is very buggy. It is unoptimized. Load times are in excess of 30, 40, 50 seconds sometimes. And even basic functionality and basic features do not work. One of the issues I had was a Seamoth battery would run out. And I say, okay, great, I'll replace it with a new battery. I couldn't. I had to reload the game, then I could. I would look at a mob attacking me and I would lose health. I would use a health pack. Health would remain the same. Okay, reload the game. There you go, you can heal up again. All these things should work. At least the game not having certain content or the game not being finished and having placeholder art or placeholder dialogue is acceptable. But currently, the game's FPS fluctuates between 25 and 200 for no particular reason. Even though the game has a very interesting FOV option for both vertical and horizontal FOV, you don't really have any benefit of using that because the FPS just drops down to absolutely nothing. And even on greater screen sizes, the UI doesn't scale that well, and let's not even get into performance and everything like that when you're looking at stuttering and pop-in and rendering and everything related. This is a very early access title. This is a very early access build, and it is very much not viable as a commercial product yet. If you loved Subnautica, if you think the developers with Subnautica did a tremendously good job, then I could see you supporting this game as sort of a handout to developers saying, here, have some money and let me know when you're done in about a year or 2 years time. If you're planning on buying this game to actively play it right now, I recommend you simply don't and wait until the game is released. I always suggest waiting on the release for a game or waiting until they fix things, and that is no different here. But in this case, I really truly feel that if you're buying the game now to play it right now, you're only doing yourself a disfavor by burning out on the game experience with a subpar title. What could be a very good title with some more attention that you could enjoy much more greatly if you simply waited a little bit longer. That said, at the end of the day, it's your wallet and your choice what to do with it. I would strongly urge you to just hold off on buying this game right now unless you are heavily invested in Subnautica as a whole and you just want to build habitats in a different locale than the shallows or whatever else was still available in the old Subnautica. That is your call. My call is suggesting that you keep an eye on this very interesting development on Subnautica, this very cool world, but this very, very buggy ship it's trying to sail in on. If you like this video, press that like button down below. If you didn't like this video, there's a dislike button for exactly that purpose. And do you agree or disagree with me on waiting to purchase this title? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to see more content like this on the channel, just press that subscribe button down below and I will deliver. Until then, I'll see you next time, right here on GuyLogicGaming.